What's up, guys? We're back working on the Z again today, and today we're going to be doing some super cool mods to it. What we're going to be doing is installing this brand new fan shroud. So if you may remember, I have these two 12-inch eBay fans that came with my radiator, and they're just not quite doing it. I don't know if it's the fans or maybe it's just the radiator, but basically when I'm sitting at idle, the engine temperature will continue to climb. Obviously it gets to a point and then it stops, but it's too high at that point. So what I'd like to do is to install this. This is a fan shroud off of a Chevy Malibu. I'll go ahead and put the year. I think it's the 4-cylinder version. But the reason we want these is because you can see how thick these fan blades are. They're very nice. That one's a little bit smaller than this one. But you can see on the old ones, they have very thin fan blades. So these ones are going to be able to pull a lot more air through more effectively. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to have to trim up some of these tabs that we can't use on ours, and then we'll go ahead and see if we can install it. So the first step that we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and remove our front bumper. It's just going to be easiest. I don't think we'd be able to actually get it through. Maybe we could try to shimmy it through this way, but we're just going to remove the bumper, make it a lot easier. I already have a video on that if you want to go watch that. It's in 360 degrees. Pretty cool if you ask me. But we're going to go ahead and basically just remove these two, remove these two. There is 3 bolts along a fender bracket on either side, or 3 nuts I guess, on either side. And then there are a few on the bottom. Let's see if I can show it to you guys. Right, they're up here. I don't know if you can see them in front of the intercooler. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get those all taken care of, and then this bumper should come off. Alright, you can see we got the front bumper off. I forgot to mention you have to remove the fender liners to get to this top bolt on the fenders right there for the fender stays. And then also you have turn signals. You want to go ahead and undo those so that when you pull it out you don't accidentally rip out the wiring. But now you can see we have very good access to our full radiator right here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually just take off this old setup right here. They're kind of like zip ties that go through the thing. So I'm just going to cut them with some wire cutters. And we're going to save some of this wiring right here because we're going to use it to wire up the new fans. But let me go ahead and pull those apart real quick. So you got those fans off really easily. They just came right out. It is something that I noticed. The plastic on these zip tie kind of things, they became very brittle, which, you know, it makes sense over the year when it's getting hot and everything and cold. So maybe when we go ahead and attach this new one, we'll try to kind of tab into these outside pieces here so that it's a little more sturdy than these pieces that go through the radiator. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim up these pieces. I can't really access it from the front. What I might try to do is lift up. I'll go ahead and undo the bolt there and over there and try to lift it up and maybe try to pull them out through the front. But I'm going to go ahead and clean this up just a tiny little bit, and then we'll start mocking up this new fan shroud. Alright guys, you can see I went ahead and cleaned it up just a little bit. Now what we're going to go ahead and do, I will say right here, I cut my hose. You don't have to cut your hose. The reason I did this is because I'm going to be putting in an aftermarket coolant temperature sensor. So if you're not going to be doing that, you don't need to cut your hose. But it just happened to be that I am doing it at the same time, and it's going to make life a little bit easier for me because now I can kind of move this radiator a little bit easier and get the fan shroud in. But if you wanted to, you could probably take off the hose right down here and just lift it up, and that will give you good clearance into here to slot it in. But now we're going to go ahead, we're going to grab the new fan shroud. I'm going to go ahead and try to fit it in. We're probably going to have to cut those tabs off at the sides, but we're going to see how it goes. And then we're going to go ahead and see if we can tab into these outer pieces again in order to mount it. But there we go. I'm going to go ahead and grab this and see how it goes. Alright guys, so there's been a bit of a development, if you can see. I went ahead and took the radiator out. It was just going to be easier for me to get over the little like 90-degree neck thing right here. And I just didn't really have a lot of room to kind of slide my radiator up and out. So I went ahead, undid that bottom one. I drained the coolant, and you can see it's right here on the ground. So if you can see, there's a little bit of a gap on the top, maybe a tiny little gap on the bottom. I Might have just placed that wrong. So it's got maybe like an inch on the top that it doesn't cover. But that's not too terribly bad, and that is where I had my temperature sensor for my fans anyways. So we will be good with that. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do, we're going to come over here. This is actually, so I cut these tabs off if you guys remember. But it doesn't like sitting exactly perfect. I'm just going to kind of pull it up where it needs to be. But there is the screw hole right here. There's the screw hole right here. There's just a hole right there. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab a drill bit. I'm going to cut some holes in this little flange kind of thing right here. And I'm just going to zip tie the fan shroud on. You could do a little bit more trimming to this like interior lip over here to kind of get it to sit more flush. I might actually do that just to kind of get it to sit closer to the radiator so it has good suction. But then I'm just going to use zip ties to hold it on. I'm probably going to use plastic zip ties just because they won't be abrasive to anything. And they're pretty easy to change out if they ever break. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this up a little bit, and then I'll get some zip ties, cut some holes, and mount this fan shroud to the radiator. Alright guys, if you can see, we got the new fan shroud in. It was pretty difficult to get in. I had to go ahead and put the shroud in first. I had somebody else hold it up while I put the radiator in. It was a pretty tight fit. If you guys remember, this is the 2-row from eBay. I am going to try to get a 3-row in here, but I believe the 3 rows are even thicker than this, so it might be an even more difficult fit if you have the 3-row Champion. But I did get to fit. I did have to redo the zip ties on the sides in order to secure it, but it's looking pretty good now. What I'm going to go ahead and do right now is I'm going to test polarity on these fans and see which one is positive, which one is negative, and then I'm going to wire it all up. Remember, when you're wiring the fans, you want them to be in parallel. So you have a power that comes to this, and you have a power that also comes to the other one. You don't want to run them together, so you don't want to do to this one, to that one, and then out. That's not how you want to do it. That's called series. You want to do it in parallel. But then I'm just going to go ahead and utilize this ground that I had up here before. If you guys want to know more about this relay setup and everything, I have a full eFan plus R134A review kind of on how I did everything here, if you want to check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and redo this, and then we're going to go ahead and get all of our radiator hoses connected again and put it all back together. Alright guys, I got everything back together. I got it all wired up. I would recommend some big thick wire on this. I used kind of, I think it was 14 gauge, but I would probably use at least 12 gauge. So I'll probably come back and redo this wiring. It was just all that I had on hand, but it is all put back together. I went ahead and redid the thermostat over here. I have yet to put in this little temperature sensor, but that'll be in a different video, so you don't have to worry about that. But other than that, all we have is reassembly. What we want to go ahead and do first, before we go ahead and put everything back together, is actually fill up the system with coolant. Make sure that there aren't any leaks. Places like this joint, if you have a sensor here. We didn't take any of this off. We didn't take that off. I did take off the bottom radiator hose down there. So we want to go ahead and turn it on, get it up to temperature so that there is enough pressure in the system, and make sure that at least the fans are kicking on. Make sure that there's nothing leaking out of any of these joints. And then we are all good to go to reassemble. So let's go ahead, turn it on, and see how it does. Alright guys, so I went ahead and turned the car on. I brought it up to temperature. You want to make sure and go ahead and burp your cooling system if you went ahead and undid some of your lines. I think you will need to go ahead and take the radiator out just because it's kind of a close call right in here, and you really got to wiggle this guy in first before the radiator. So that is just kind of a heads up. You probably will have to remove the radiator. So that's a good time to replace it. If you have a stock one, they're known to get clogged up and just not work anymore. So you can go with a nice 2-core, 3-core radiator. But they are working really well. I think it's going to cool a lot better than our eBay fans. This one is certainly a lot larger than the 12-inch. I believe this is a 10, and I think that's a 14 or a 16. It's probably a 14. But the blades are a lot thicker, so it's going to pull a lot more air. And it also has this shroud to kind of pull air from these sections where even the fans aren't. So I think it's going to work a lot better than our eBay fans. So I'm super happy. If you guys have any questions about what I did or about where I got these parts, I believe I got this off Rock Auto. I think it was about $100. But if you guys have any other questions about it, definitely drop a comment down below, and I'll try to answer it as best as I can. And I will see you guys later.